Good morning and welcome back to day 3 of our coverage of Microsoft Ignite. Obviously, Microsoft Ignite's live event ended after Wednesday, but yesterday and actually today too, all of the pre-recorded and on-demand content is still available. Those are the things that you'll find in your backpack, and most of the Envision team had set aside yesterday to go and watch those recordings to get a little more down and into the weeds with the announcements that were made on day 1 and day 2. With me today, I have Mr. Kyle Mueller and new face with us today, Justin Wilkes. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, sir. How about a virtual high five this morning?
All right, I'm going to try for this. Wrong side. Here we go. Hey, look at that.
Boom.
Fantastic. That's what you get from me first thing in the morning is the best I can do with a high five. Not a morning guy. I don't know. Did you bring one of those huge cups of coffee like I've got over here on the side of the screen?
Always.
Everybody's got
Always.
their cup of coffee. I've got my caffeinated water. Does that count?
It does, yeah. Anything to get the juices flowing, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well, so, I mean, I think it's obvious to everybody Ignite was huge this year. Even yesterday, watching the more in-depth sessions, it was really profound what some of the new technologies can do. Kyle and I have been talking to everybody here for the last 2 days, Justin. But look, you're with the BD team at Envision, and I really wanted you here today because I thought you're a guy that's right in front of the clients. You're on the front line. I thought your insight would be valuable for everybody. Tell us what you were looking for and hoping to get out of Ignite when you started attending.
Well, I'd say first things first, that mesh platform just blew my mind, right? It was one of those like video game things. If I talk about like what it compares to, for me, and I'm an older guy, 47, video games back in my day were Asteroids and, Pong. When they released Super Mario Brothers for Nintendo, that was like blow my mind, and that's what Mesh was. um, but for me and for my clients, what I was really hoping to get out of it is solving business challenges. There's a ton of challenges that business are having over the last 12, 18 months, and that's what I was looking to accomplish.
Nice. And so when you set up your backpack and set up your agenda, what kinds of sessions did you put into your list?
Well, we do a lot with nonprofits. So I did cloud for nonprofits. I did hybrid cloud, cybersecurity, teams and compliance and security. So it was a lot around the security and compliance of the platform because that's the concerns I'm seeing out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with one of our nonprofit customers who also attended that same session, and it's interesting to me how many nonprofits really are not aware of what the makeup of the licensing is or how it aligns, what's free to them and what's not. I thought that session did a really nice job of clarifying a lot of that for people, and it started a great conversation with one of our customers yesterday. Mr. Kyle, how about you? I mean, yesterday was, all backpack stuff. What was in your backpack for yesterday? What were you spending time on?
Yeah, so yesterday for me was diving a lot deeper on a lot of the Power Platform stuff that I've already talked about. I had some really, really good sessions on security and compliance actually within Power BI, as well as some Azure data stuff, and some really good sessions on Power Apps and Power Automate as well. I saw one that gave a really nice walkthrough of what's actually possible in the Windows 10 version of Power Automate, which is brand new.
Cool. Yeah, I spent actually a bunch of my time yesterday on some of the Azure stuff as well. I did an Azure Windows Virtual Desktop session just to get some updates on Azure Monitor for Windows Virtual Desktop because there were updates there. I spent some time attending a session on Azure Communication Services, which is their programmatic tool for SMS and text messaging through applications. Among other things, telephony, meetings, all that stuff. That's all available to developers, as is the entire suite of Azure AI and ML and cognitive services. So that's where I spent a lot of my time yesterday. It's nice to actually I spend most of my time normally in a day on workflow and automation and things like that. It was nice to step out of that and spend a little more time. Actually, you know what else I did? Can't believe I didn't even think to mention it. I took advantage yesterday of one of the professional consulting sessions. Envision, Mike, we're a consultancy and we're a company full of engineers, but always
Right.
relish the opportunity to talk to another engineer, and particularly one who directly works for Microsoft. So, we recently did some automation for a client that involved Azure Functions and creating workflows inside of Azure to pull data out of a system that didn't want the data to come out of it for analytics. And so we used the opportunity to have an Azure engineer take a look at what we built and say, hey, these are the things you did really well, and these are the things where you could do it differently, and it's not a matter of better or worse, but here's the pros and cons, right? There's more than
Right.
one way to do just about everything in the Azure platform. So that was enlightening and a ton of fun. And I got to say, we got a mountain of information from the Microsoft resources. Just in that 45-minute call, he probably gave us 15 or 16 references to go through that really, by the end of the day, I was getting messages from our developers saying, oh, dude, you should see this, this, and this. So that was really great. That was a ton of fun. So I don't think the point of today is really to bang away on regurgitating the list of all the new stuff that came out. We did that day one and day two, and frankly, there's
Right.
more than we could ever do. That's why people went to Ignite and listened to the keynotes instead of coming here and listening to us for that. People want to hear from us how to use that stuff. So, give me, Justin, sort of the high level of what you see in the field. What is one of the big concerns and takeaways that you think your clients ought to have?
Well, first and foremost, the last 12 months have been different for everybody, and I think that when it comes to the technology, it's been an evolution over that time frame. So clients had to get remote, and they had to be distributed and work in a way that they've never worked before. And the Microsoft platform, for me and for my clients, has become this great tool for them to use, but how do we use it? And we talk about teams and we talk about the security. And so IT is concerned about the security. The users want to be able to perform their jobs. And it's like, how do we make it all happen? And
Yeah.
so, it's been a challenge, but the Microsoft platform has been a great place for clients to start leveraging the technology.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I only heard once in all of Ignite, and I was really glad that I didn't hear it more, was, at one point, one person in one presentation said, and then the system magically does this. There's nothing magic about it. And that's the thing, is that when we, in terms of how do we get from point A to point B, I can't just wave a wand and it's all going to magically take care of itself. And it's not something you can do casually. It's something you got to be
Right.
thoughtful about. So, I have some ideas around that. I thought we'd talk about that today. But before I do, one of the things I was thinking about is, how to kind of coalesce all the information from Ignite. If you're an IT professional or an executive, you're coming back from Ignite and you're thinking back and like, what was that announcement again? And it occurred to me that a tool I use may be something that a lot of people haven't heard of. So I'll ask you guys, has anybody heard of the Microsoft Book of News?
I have not.
You have not. Mr.
I've
Kyle?
only I've only heard of it because you and I were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, the Microsoft Book of News, I don't know why that's not more publicized. They don't seem to really announce that a whole lot at Ignite. I did hear one presenter mention it, but the Microsoft Book of News, and I'm just going to pull that up on my screen real quick. The Microsoft Book of News is released every single year. It's actually continually released, and you can go to the Microsoft Book of News. This is the March issue of the Book of News. And if you go to the Book of News and you go to the table of contents here, all of the recent announcements associated with any one of the areas of interest are here. So if I click on Microsoft Teams and I click on the presenter layouts and audience views, it brings me right down to the detail sections of what those announcements were and what they mean for you. So the Microsoft Book of News, if you guys haven't checked it out, you should absolutely do it. Fantastic resource from Microsoft. It's something I lean on very heavily. Um, but in any case, you can get to that either just by Googling Microsoft Book of News. That's easy enough. And it's going to bring you to news.microsoft.com/ignite March to blah, blah, blah. Or if you don't want to have to go through all that, you can just type in envisionsuccess.net/BON, Book of News, and it will bring
Now,
you
with
right
all
to the Book
the
of News. Huh?
With all the changes that are going on, that's a great place to go get more information about what's happening, because it's, through the Ignite sessions, I found that so much is changing so quickly. So you need a place to go. I think that's a nice avenue for it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too.
and it's worth mentioning on the Book of News too. The reason why I hadn't heard of it before is because I have RSS feeds set up for all of the individual Microsoft blogs that I really care about. But the Book of News is really a great spot to have everything in one space. And from
Right.
there, for the rest of the year, those RSS feeds are going to come in handy.
I'm sighing a little because this is going to feel like a setup to the audience, but it's totally not. We're doing this live. I had no way to know that Kyle was going to say that, but Kyle, tell them how you get the RSS feeds. What did you do inside Microsoft Teams?
So inside Microsoft Teams, this definitely sounds like a
It
setup.
really feels like a
I
setup.
So I have an internal user group for all things Power Platform here at Envision, and I have a channel inside that user group in Teams where I use Power Automate with some of the simplest automations I've ever seen to essentially just say, when there's a new post in this RSS feed, post a message in this Teams channel. And now that Teams channel has those RSS feeds available to everyone who's part of the user group instead of just me.
Yeah, so that was one way that we helped get our team up to speed on the technical side of things. Was we went out and found the best RSS feeds, multiple RSS feeds from lots of different channels, and then we use Power Automate to bring them all into Teams in one place so that our people don't have to go hunt and peck for that for themselves. So since we're on the subject of great people that we listen to stay up to date on what's going on, let me ask you, there are a couple of YouTube channels and sites that I go to that I subscribe to. There's lots of them really, but two of the ones that I like a lot, John Levesque. His YouTube channel is focused exclusively pretty much on automation. So if you're interested in Power Automate, John Levesque, great resource. It's Levesque, John Levesque. I also follow, of course, Stephen Rose, and Stephen Rose has both a YouTube channel, but he also is on Microsoft's Inside Microsoft Teams page and channel. That's his show. Envision actually was recently featured on that show, so if you do go check him out, make sure to watch our segment. You can also follow him on Twitter at #InsideMSTeams. And speaking of Twitter, if you haven't already, if you're a Twitter user, obviously you need to follow Microsoft. Follow Microsoft Mechanics. Again, another great YouTube channel in Microsoft Mechanics, and following the Microsoft 365 Twitter feed is also a really great way to get the latest and greatest on what's going on. Kyle, on the Power Platform side of the world, I think you've got a couple you follow pretty heavily too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sort of clump mine into three little categories for us. We have the super nerdy stuff, we have the moderately nerdy stuff, and we have the less nerdy stuff. So on the super nerdy stuff, two of my favorite people to follow. One of them is going to be Matthew Roche, or maybe it's Roche. I'm not positive how he pronounces his last name, but he is on Twitter at SQL Allfather. That's SQLALL Father. And he also has a YouTube channel called BI Polar that's some really, really good administration and governance content on it. And then also on the nerdy side is Alex Powers, who goes by the name Not About to Sell. He's on YouTube, he's on Twitter, he's on all of the platforms out there, and he has some really amazing deep dive technical content on things like Tabular Editor. For the moderately nerdy side of the house, we have Guy in a Cube. They are probably the biggest names in content creation for Power BI, and they actually had a really amazing live stream just earlier this week for a Ignite recap themselves that I popped into quite a few times on the screen. So if anyone wants to see the way that the Power BI community reacted to all the announcements on that side, their stream is an amazing spot to go. And for
So
the non
wait, hold on before you keep going. I'm dying to know. Do you think, having interacted with Guy in a Cube a bit here, and I'm a big Guy in a Cube fan. I've been watching them forever. Do you think that they're going to feel better about being referred to as moderately nerdy, or would they feel better about being referred to as extremely nerdy? Because that's a badge of honor there, being extremely nerdy.
Extremely
So,
nerdy. Yeah.
True. I think as individuals, Adam definitely would be the extremely nerdy side. I would say Patrick is more on the
Uh,
moderate
look
side.
at you. You're starting something on YouTube. This is coming back to you. I can guarantee it.
It
Yeah.
almost definitely will.
Okay, so
I,
before we
I
dig
need
the
something. I need something for the non-nerdy people.
Yeah, okay.
What do you have
So
for me, Kyle?
so why don't
I
you give
got
them that, and let's I think that's a great idea that we get out of this before we dig the hole any deeper. So all right, so moving away from Guy in a Cube for a minute, um, Mr. Kyle, something
so
that you for Justin, what can Justin watch?
yeah, so Justin, for you, one of my favorite people to follow was actually one of the hosts at Microsoft Ignite as well. Donna Sarkar on Twitter is absolutely amazing. She's a huge Power Platform advocate,
Yes,
and I just love the content that she posts. She does
yes.
a lot of work to connect people that are on the super nerdy side with people on the non-nerdy side, and actually does a lot of features for people who started from no code or IT background and built amazing things in the Power Platform.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, for you, Justin, I suggest that you follow a show, Winnie the Pooh, I think it is perfect for you. You'll do great with
I'm
that. Uh,
I'm already following Big Bird, so
okay.
that's
All
a
right.
perfect
Great.
match.
Well, listen, so I don't want to keep everybody too long today. Ignite is in the rear view, but the work is up in front of us. That's still ahead. So I was thinking about what it takes as a business. If you're a business or you're an IT professional going back to a business, Ignite's over. They've downloaded all their big brains into us for 2 straight days, 3 straight days. Um, there are some steps. You got to action on that now. So, in 2 sentences or less, and I don't mean that literally, but in a brief thought, how do you think businesses or IT professionals should go about trying to action what just happened at Ignite, Justin?
Yeah, tough to swallow all of it, right? So, where I have my clients start, first and foremost is the Microsoft Security Score. If you've got a tenant, go take a look at that, see where you compare against other businesses. And then really, whether it be Envision or somebody else, look to a third party that lives and dies and breathes in the Microsoft platform every single day. Our team is well versed in all the technologies that are out there on the platform. So engage with a third party.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good advice. I don't think it's something anybody should really try to do by themselves. Mr. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think building on what Justin said actually about engaging a third party, I think it goes beyond just third party in terms of businesses, but in personal communications as well. Like I follow a lot of these Microsoft people and other like Microsoft MVPs on Twitter because the content that they bring to the table on their own outside of the official channels really adds a lot to my experience wanting to be an expert in these tools. There's so many amazing blog posts out there from people who may or may not be Microsoft official in one way or another that help frame things in a new way and bring new use cases to light that I may not have thought of and that Microsoft might not be
Hmm.
officially putting out there.
Yeah, and so for me, when I think about, how you go forward from here, it kind of boils down into 5 things for me. And I really wanted to take the time to get this thought out for everybody. And you guys are welcome to tell me what you think about this plan too. But, if I'm a business today or I'm an IT professional in a business today and I'm trying to figure out how to take all that Microsoft has to offer and turn it into something that my company can leverage and really travel down that road of digital transformation and modern workplace. I'm thinking about these things. And I put them in some kind of order here, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this. First of all, is implementing zero trust security. Pretty much the overriding message. I don't know about you guys,
Right.
but to me,
For sure.
everywhere, you couldn't go 5 minutes without hearing either identity, governance, or security being used in the conversation, right? And you can't do any of those things without zero trust in place. But that does take some time. Zero trust is not like it's not a radio button that you click, enable zero trust, set security equals on. That's not a thing. So it is some configuration and some work to do. It takes some time. But I think there are things you can do concurrently. I don't think you have to go back and say, okay, we got to do zero trust, so we got to put everything else on hold for months. I think concurrently with that, you can do that Microsoft Teams best practices and adoption. I think that can happen in real time. And by the way, just so you all know, what I'm using here to do all of this is just Microsoft Whiteboard. I'm using Whiteboard to try and communicate with you guys. So this is an example of me using a simple Microsoft tool for my workflow that makes it easier for me to communicate with people. But zero trust and Teams best practices and adoption. Is your Teams deployment deployed correctly? Do you guys have you thought out, was it done with a lot of forethought where you said, okay, what's a team, what's a channel, what should be in a chat, how many teams should we have, how do we lay out our org-wide teams? Was that what happened, or was it everybody has to go home because of the pandemic and we need something to be able to communicate?
Right.
Let's throw this Teams thing out there and see what happens, right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people had no choice but to kind of crash deploy Teams, and they've done their very best to kind of get the horse back in the barn and rein it in a little bit now that it's out there. But bringing in somebody to do some best practices and adoption work with you could go a long way, because as you saw at Ignite, I mean, geez, everything that they talk about through the lens of access via Microsoft Teams, right? So I think getting that piece operationally in place, and the adoption side of it is a training discussion. Have you done formal training with your staff and your employee base on how to use Teams and get the most out of it, right? So those are things we can do as Zero Trust is going on. But
And
as
Todd,
we,
Just to touch on
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
adoption
yeah.
piece too, because if you don't have senior leadership involved in that decision, and you try to adopt Teams by just rolling it out haphazardly, like a lot of people did, you have to go back and be sure that the senior level team is on board with this initiative. Has to happen from a top-down perspective, or it just kind of dies in the vine.
You know what? I love that. That's great. That's a great comment. Let's go ahead and add that. So that you said
yeah,
top down.
and Justin, adding on to that, I think prior to working with Envision, I'd seen what I now realize are some really bad Teams implementations because it was cobbled together from scratch. And it was one of those things where they were figuring it out as they go. But having that top down leadership to have a vision of what they want the individual teams to look like really makes a world of difference. And like what we as Envision did with Empower Interns, I think is an amazing example of what can actually be done with teams when you have that vision from the top down.
Yeah, if you want to
Sure.
see that, by the way, you can go to Envision's website and just if it's right there, it's featured. You can take a look at the Empower Interns program that we ran last summer. That was a very unique use of Teams that, to Kyle's point, was really, really effective. So once we've gotten through that Teams best practices and adoption thing, we got a little green check next to that. Then you can move on to the workflow applications. Things like what I'm using right now with Microsoft Whiteboard is, does our team know what Whiteboard is and how to use it and how to get value from it so that they can collaborate together? It's been for now a long time that you could set up a whiteboard and have people from 15 different locations collaborating on a whiteboard together in real time. And I just totally dropped my pen. There we go. um, but also things like Microsoft Planner and Microsoft OneNote, and just a world of technology out there. Even simple things like PowerPoint. I've done demos of PowerPoint where we show people how to do a presentation and enable it using PowerPoint online, so that all of your attendees can have a copy of the presentation that you're delivering on their device in front of them, so that instead of just staring at the screen, they literally have it in their hands. And when we get back to a world where some things are happening in person and we're presenting live in the front of a room, I can't imagine a world. I haven't done a presentation in a long time where I didn't also say, hey, if you have a device on you, go to this website and you can get my presentation in your hand, so you don't have to squint at the screen in the front of the room. If you're in the back, you can have my presentation right in front of you. Simple things like that. Not to mention the fact that that platform also allows for live translation in more than 30 languages
Right.
so that people can consume the content in their native tongue. I mean, that's an obvious use case, but I don't think a lot of people have really addressed that workflow applications piece. Also, by the way, big shout out to Microsoft Find Time and bookings. These are tools. If you haven't looked at those things, Find Time in particular, if you are using Calendly, I'm probably going to get in trouble with the Calendly people, or of any other calendar platform, go look at Find Time if you're a 365 shop. Powerful, powerful tool. When we're on the other side of all those pre-built applications, then we've got the data visibility, automation and apps, the Power Platform stuff. And for some companies, those may be interchangeable in the priority list. I tend to put data visibility at the top, because if you don't understand the telemetry and data from your business, it's very hard to know. Whoa, I think we just
Oh,
lost Mr. Kyle and
yeah.
Mr. Justin. Hold on
Well,
just a
I'm here,
moment.
but I'm at both screens. Look at that. That's fun. This is what happens when you do live demonstrations.
It is what happens when you do
Hey,
live demonstrations, and now they've changed places. It's like magic. That's okay, no problem. So anyway, I look at the data side of the world, and on the data visibility side, I think if you don't have clear line of sight to the information your company produces, it's really hard to be effective in managing the business. So I tend to put that up to the top. But for other companies, they may already have some data visibility in place or great reporting coming out of an application that is the primary line of business app. For them, automation may be more important. But either way, if you start with zero trust and concurrently work on teams' best practices and adoption, if you take a top-down approach and focus on workflow applications, data visibility, automation, and apps, that is the path to modern workplace. That is the path to digital transformation. And oh, by the way, when you are on the other side of the zero trust conversation, it will be securing all of these things, including Microsoft Teams. So your data leakage prevention and your unified labeling, information protection, all of those things, Zero Trust will secure that whole ecosystem. So with that, I want to thank Kyle and Justin for joining me today. I appreciate you guys taking the time, and we're going to wrap it up here. So just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know that's the ask of every YouTuber everywhere. It does help us out, but more importantly, as we go forward in 21 and 22 and beyond, this Transform Everything channel is where we're going to post everything cool that we see with Microsoft. We're committed to trying to bring you guys the latest, greatest, and the best in modern workplace digital transformation, but also practical, real demonstrations of how to use these technologies, how to deploy these technologies. So subscribe if you can, and we'll see you next time.